Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing today? So, I want to come over here and talk about this topic. As many of y'all probably know by now, because this has been on the headlines all over the place on my Google feed as well as on my social media feeds ever since the live action version of Snow White, as y'all know it, came out last Friday, March 21st. It became a very bad box office flop. And we all saw it coming since last year when trailers of Snow White, the live action version of Snow White, came out last year. People were already saying and speculating that this is going to be a box office bomb because of Disney, you know, with their euphemism, their virtue signaling, and woke agenda, trying to blackwash and whitewash, fairy tale characters that were originally white Europeans and should have been kept and left as white Europeans because, this is where fairy tales like Snow White, Cinderella, The Little Mermaid, and Sleeping Beauty originated from. They originated from Central Europe. And it just doesn't make sense whatsoever to blackwash or whitewash, blackwash and brownwash these characters. Okay, just to cater to a specific demographic, and act like you care for the black community and Latino community when all Disney as a white owned company. Okay, by the way, all Disney is just trying to do is make money off of the black community. Just like how, the movie Black Panther, which first came out in 2018, and then its sequel, Wakanda Forever, which came out 3 years ago in 2022. Yeah, those movies might represent black people in a good way, but it's like it's money grabbing at the end of the day. So Snow White became a box office flop, and a lot of white people, as usual, the one of the biggest trolls on social media and one of the biggest advocates against wokeism, they weren't happy with this movie at all. They're saying that they didn't like that Snow White was portrayed as a Latina. And along with that, in this movie, and I hope I'm not giving out spoilers, because I also want to see this movie myself. I still want to go out and see this movie and compare it to the original 1937 animated film. They also didn't like the part where a woman, was portrayed and represented as insufferable, very assertive, vocal, and warrior like. And in the white man's world, not only do they not tolerate people of color, they also don't like women in their society and in their world taking leadership positions and led roles. And when you look at and read the history of affirmative action, that's how affirmative action came to be in the first place. It wasn't originally catered to black people, even though that's what history has y'all teaches and has y'all thinking. It did not originally cater to black people or any other demographic. It catered specifically to white women because white women were struggling to have power, have a voice, and have leadership and dominant positions in the workforce and in society. So that's how affirmative action came to be in the first place. And in white society, they just don't. That's the culture in white society. They just don't like women, being dominant over men, and being in more of control than men. Okay, now other cultures around the world, and especially in ancient history, women were very valued and sacred. Look at ancient Kemet. A lot of the ancient Kemetian gods and goddesses were females, and many of the pharaohs and rulers of ancient Kemet were women, because women in ancient Kemet, which was a black African civilization, okay, women were highly valued, revered, and respected. And it reflected later on in many African societies and civilizations that spread throughout Africa, particularly in West Africa, from ancient Kemet, the Amazonians, right? The Amazonians, the Dahomey tribe of, I believe, Benin or Togo. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm going off to the best ability of my knowledge. But the Dahomey tribe, okay, the Dahomey Amazons, that tribe primarily consisted of females, because women and females in that tribe were highly respected and revered. So when you go into white society, this just isn't the case at all. Okay, white men, especially and specifically and particularly, want to be dominated not want to dominate not only over white women or any other women, but over all races of men. Okay, but talking about women, white people just don't like seeing women in those kinds of roles and leadership positions and portrayals. They just don't. And this is another reason why Snow White became a box office flop. Not only because of Disney's brown washing of white European characters, but in Western cinema, like I said, women are just not seen as leadership and dominant material, just not. And Disney, you need to stop making these live action films, okay? Because as many other people stated, it's not relevant, it's not needed. I did like the live action adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, as well as the Lion King adaptations, but all these other movies are very shitty. Last month, when I watched the Mufasa the Lion King, right before the movie showed, actually it wasn't last month, it was right at the very beginning of this month, March 1st. Right before they showed that movie, they showed the trailer of the upcoming live action Lilo and Stitch, and I'm probably not gonna see that movie at all, because it just looks shitty. The graphics look shitty. The original animated movies are always and will always be the best and the original. You need to stop making these live action movies because it's doing you no it's doing you no good. It's not serving you justice. And in the long run, when you keep making these kinds of movies that people are just not buying into, it's gonna be the ultimate cost of your downfall, whether you realize it or not. Okay? Especially when you keep brown washing and black washing white characters just to cater to a particular demographic. Okay? Not to mention, it's not just Disney that's doing this. Other studios as well, like DreamWorks, are also following the same terrible path that Disney is going. DreamWorks is going to release a live action adaptation, I believe this year or maybe next year. A live action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon, and that's just another live action adaptation I'm not going to watch, because the original How to Train Your Dragon movies will always be the best. Okay? These companies are are a trip. They're really tripping, and they just need to stop because they're failing miserably. Now, I have been seeing all over the place that Disney is planning. I don't know how true it is, and I don't know if they will really put this into fruition, but I hope they do, because I miss the era of old hand-drawn animation. You know, it's not just live action adaptations that I and many others are not fond of. I don't really like these 3D movies that, you know, Disney has been making. The only ones I like are Moana and Tangled. You know, that's just about it. So Disney is planning on going back to traditional hand-drawn animation. And you know, Disney, when you do that, instead of, you know, creating blackwash and brownwashed characters, why don't you create characters that are original, like, you know, movies you made back in the day, like Lilo and Stitch, where you portrayed Hawaiian culture in a positive light. The Brother Bear and Pocahontas movies, where you also portrayed Native Americans in a positive light, and, you know, not like and as the racist stereotypical savages. Okay? The only thing I didn't like about Pocahontas was when, at the end of the movie, Pocahontas end up marrying the cracker. But you have Mulan, okay, another positive representation of the Asian community. Elena of Avalor, okay, Disney Junior television series, based off medieval Renaissance Latin American culture. Why don't you, you know, create more movies and television shows like that, instead of, you know, blackwashing and brownwashing characters that are white Europeans and originally came from Europe. You know, Disney back in the day actually had, you know, multiculturalism and diversity in them, whether they realized it or not, before they started brownwashing and blackwashing white characters. Okay, this is a cartoon. It's called One by One. It's a short film produced by Walt Disney Animation Studios that takes place in South Africa, and it's about these, you know, children that are trying to come out of poverty. Disney? Why don't you make movies like that, where for once you try to portray Africa in a good light. Not to mention, the previous Moana movie, very, very, very surprisingly, the animators of Moana 2 decided to showcase the indigenous, the original and indigenous African inhabitants of the Pacific and Melanesian islands. And this is just really, really shocking to me that Disney would show, especially a company that's white owned and white run, particularly Jewish run. It's shocking to me that they actually eventually ended up showcasing the hidden Black African history of those islands. That's a very good start. Disney, why don't you continue making more movies like that? And by the way, this is a screenshot I took off, that I took from Instagram, of a black Instagrammer who's giving her commentary on the black Melanesians and Polynesians who appeared in Moana 2. Because we were all shocked that, Disney would actually do something positive like that. And why don't Disney keep at it? Make more movies and television series. If you want to cater to a demographic and, be seemingly all about diversity, equity, and inclusion, why don't you create characters, original Black, Latin, Asian, or brown characters without brown washing or black washing, white characters just to, show your fake virtue signaling that you give a fuck about how black people are represented. Make more movies of original black characters. And, showcase and, positively portray African culture in a good light so that people will stop buying into these negative stereotypes about, how bad Africa is and how much of a shithole country. Africa isn't even a country, by the way, okay? It's a continent consisted of over 54 countries. People are just so stupid and continue to call Africa a country. It's a fucking continent, dumbasses, okay? And by the way, I have been around Africa. On a previous video I did, I showed a picture of me in the island of Seychelles off the coast of East Africa, but that's actually not the only African country I've been to. I've been to a lot of other African countries like South Africa, particularly Cape Town. Very beautiful place. I've also been to Namibia, Tanzania, Gabon, Ghana. Very, very, very beautiful places. I've been to, the good parts of Africa that they will just never ever show you on television. Okay? And it looks like Disney is, trying to break out of that paradigm, even though right now they're making live action movies about, where about blackwashed and brownwashed characters. I am actually a little bit proud of Disney that, as you're seeing here, this is a television series exclusively on Disney Plus called Iwaju. It's about some high-tech Nigerian children living in a futuristic setting of Nigeria, where Nigeria is not living in a third world country and in a third world condition. It's living in a high-tech civilization and society. Because really and truly, okay? And, maybe the reason why Disney made this series is because Disney is realizing, the creators of Disney are realizing that the West is falling and Africa is rising. Point blank period. That's also what the movie Black Panther was about. African people living in advanced societies and civilizations, and they don't want to share all their minerals and resources with the outside world, to protect themselves and keep themselves empowered. That's the future African is destined for. Africa, sorry. That's the future Africa and Africans are destined for. Western society and civilization is falling, okay, as you're seeing right now. So Disney, continue making movies and television series portraying, all these different African countries in a positive light. Okay, and like I said, create original black and brown characters without brownwashing or blackwashing white characters. Okay, and if you're also going to target towards a demographic, instead of taking, making money off of them, if you really want to help, give back to the black community. If you're just if you're gonna make movies, about black people or Latinos, and then make money off of them and take their money, if you really want to help out these, communities, use that money to give back to them and, help, patronize and, support and get their, businesses up and running and develop. Maybe you as a company can create subsidiaries that are within your company and organization that are black owned, and black people can use the money they make to give back to their people and their communities. Why don't you do that? It's not just enough to give and put out a positive representation of black people and, brown people. At the end of the day, they're going to give you your money. They're going to give you their money. So help them out in return by giving back to them and helping them, grow financially, economically, and spiritually. It's as simple as that. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to come over here and tell you guys what I think about the live action adaptation of Snow White being a box office flop. And by the way, look at this collage right here. By the way, I did not forget, because this came up in my mind so late. So I downloaded this picture right after I downloaded all these other pictures. I didn't forget about Coco, okay? Just to let y'all know, because I forgot to put Coco, the characters from the movie Coco. I forgot to include them in this, whole collage of these, Disney characters of people of color. So I after I downloaded all these other pictures of African Disney characters, I downloaded the characters from Coco so late, since I thought about it too late. But yeah, didn't forget about Coco, just in case you guys were wondering when you were looking at the previous collage why the characters from Coco is missing. I didn't forget about them. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think of all this, and I will see you guys on a next video.